President Park Geun-hye's rise as one of the world's most powerful women has sparked a new conversation here in Korea and the region about gender equality issues. For more on that topic, in this, the century of the woman, we are joined today by the president of the International Federation of BPW, Freda Miriklis. Freda Miriklis, president of the International Federation of BPW. She has strived to promote gender equality and to narrow the wage gap between men and women. Freda Miriklis is the youngest president of the International Federation of BPW in its 80-year history. She has also received prestigious awards. Ms. Miriklis, welcome and thank you very much for being on the program.
It's a great pleasure.
Let's begin with the International Federation of BPW. For those viewers out there who may not be familiar with what BPW is and what it does, give us a little bit of a better understanding.
Sure. So the International Federation of Business and Professional Women, known worldwide as BPW International, is an organisation that is built on the premise of women's true economic potential. So we represent women in the economy and women in the professions, and we are about enabling more women to be in positions of power and decision making. Today, our organisation spans across some 98 countries across 5 continents, and we've been established since 1930. And we hold very prestigious category status at the United Nations, a position that we've held since 1947.
And your background in particular is an interesting background. I think you came from investment. You were an investment expert and have transitioned into this role as president. How did that come about?
That's right. I've had a career in the wealth management business, and I really felt a sense of discrimination being in what was generally a male-dominated environment in the finance world, and I could really feel and sense a lot of the discriminatory practices that were in place, and I really felt that we needed to do something about that. So for me, I've kind of felt that I had a calling to really want to understand a lot of the discrimination that exists in workplaces, in marketplaces, and more to the point, to really try to find some solutions about how we can deal with that in the myriads of cultures and the different countries around the world.
Now, at the recent Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity, you launched an initiative. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, we just launched the Korea in Action Yes for WEPS campaign. And this is pretty exciting for Korea because what we're doing is we're using the influence of BPW International to really bring about some change here at the national level. BPW International has a collaboration with the International Organisation of Employers, which are the Peak Business and Industry Group based in Geneva. And we also have a collaboration with the United Nations Global Compact in the UN headquarters in New York to work with the Korean Federation, the Korean Employers Federation, and also in conjunction with the Global Compact Korea Network. So we're bringing the business groups, civil society, so that we can raise awareness around the women's empowerment principles, and as we spoke about earlier, really be able to provide this framework as a basis of moving forward so that those companies that perhaps don't know about what they need to do, what issues they need to be addressing within their companies, we can now assist them in terms of providing a robust framework that they can start to work with to really start seeing the sort of changes that need to happen in our workplaces, not only for women, but to ensure and to provide better quality choices for both women and men.
Raising awareness and giving them the tools that they need to make the changes that they might want to make but don't know how to get there.
Absolutely, and this is about them coming up with their own policies. Far be it for us to tell them what they need to do. I think it's very much up to the company to decide, and up to the board of directors, obviously, right throughout the corporation. It is reliant very much on the culture, on the behaviours, on the attitudes that are within the existing company. But what we can provide the companies now is with a solid framework, a framework that they can derive, their own policies. And what we are likely to find here in Korea is that some companies are already probably doing half of the things. They're probably doing WEPS principle number 1, 4, and 5. What we want to be able to do is to work with them, engage with them, and consult with them in ways that they can actually improve in the other areas. Because we believe, and this is by looking at real life examples, it's not theory, it's actually practice, so we know that it works. We know that when companies initiate those 7 key principles, we actually start to see systemic changes within those corporations. So this is not just a gloss over, it's not just a, oh yes, we're doing this and it's sitting over there with HR or CSR. This is about getting a commitment from the board level and following a clear action plan that if the company is committed, they will see real change happening within their corporation, and hopefully it will mean that they won't be denying themselves 50% of the talent pool. They will be able to work out ways of retaining their key talent.
You have said that leveling the playing field and making things more equal for women is actually to the benefit of economies. It actually sparks things along and improves competitiveness in these economies. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. I think it's widely known now that when we have more women represented in positions of decision making, we get better collaborations, better outcomes, and indeed, in a corporate sense, we actually see a huge boost to profitability, whether it means company profits or return on investment, return on equity. It makes a lot of business sense today, and it's no longer the right thing to do as it's the smart thing to do, because increasingly shareholders and stakeholders outside of companies are now starting to look at the compelling and the conclusive evidence that shows us now that when we have more than 3 women on boards, profitability in fact improves. And so I think increasingly businesses are wanting to understand not only how they can create more enabling environments, but what they can do about it. And so we're very excited to be here in Korea talking about a plan of action and indeed speaking about a UN initiative which is known as the Women's Empowerment Principles, Equality Means Business.
You speak of creating an enabling environment, and the things you're saying there, of course, sound great. Every business wants to grow, every economy wants to grow as well. So what are the obstacles keeping that from happening then?
So, there are many, and these are all varied, but generally we find it's the cultures, it's the attitudes, it's the behaviours, it's the cultural taboos that generally are barriers for women to enter areas that they are interested in, whether it be into enterprises or for them being entrepreneurs, or whether it being, running companies, being within a corporate sense. So the reasons are many and varied. What we really need to do is to strategically set up a framework, a plan of action to really be able to tackle some of these issues. And once they're brought to bear, I think we generally do find that a lot of corporations want to make differences, they just don't know how to. And so if we can deliver a framework that shows them, if they do 7 key things, 7 key areas that they can address, then that's making a progress, that's making change, and it's making progress within the company. And ultimately, if we can then transition that into governments, if we can transition that into our education sector, if we can transition that right throughout civil society and into our communities, then I think we've got some lasting change.
You're talking about this framework, then specifically what measures need to be taken, maybe specifically here in the Asia region as you look at it, to really level the playing field? What needs to happen?
Well, look, there are 7 key things that we talk about as part of this UN Women and UN Global Compact initiative that we're speaking about. We commonly refer to the Women's Empowerment Principles as the WEPs. So when we look at the WEPs, the 7 key areas are around having a high-level commitment to gender equality. So it's got to start at the top. Obviously, it needs to be worked through from the bottom up, but also from the top down, and that's absolutely key critical. We need to look at some of the non-discriminatory issues that exist in workplaces, and one of those that BPW is currently leading in the world is with addressing the gender pay gap that exists. Now, here in the Asian Pacific region, that gender pay gap disparity ranges from 30 to 90%. So it's really quite wide, and we need to find solutions to narrowing the pay gap. And so that's another key critical issue. The issue around procurement is another thing that is very interesting. Supply chains, when we're looking at corporations today, really have the power to be able to decide who and from which companies they're securing their products from. And we are really now creating opportunities for them to consider sourcing their products from women-owned, run, operated businesses. And BPW here has come together with the International Trade Centre to actually establish a global platform for action on sourcing from women vendors. And this creates opportunities, real opportunities for women to enter some of those corporate supply chains. And we also work with governments to government as a main procurer of goods and services, they have the ability to be able to make decisions on who they buy from as well. So there's some of the ideas or some of the principles that underline what we're talking about to corporations here in Korea.
And speaking to those corporations here in Korea, what sort of feedback are they giving you about the environment here? Are they optimistic that change will come in the near future?
You know, there is almost a global corporate consciousness, and I feel it very much here in Korea. I feel that we are amidst the change. And as we were saying earlier, it really is about showing companies what to do. I think companies have the best of intentions, they just don't know how to. So I really feel that there is an underlying current. I really feel that Korea is best placed to lead this change that we're wanting to see in the Asia Pacific region. And I really do believe that now with the Yes for WEPs, or the Korea in Action Yes for WEPs initiative that we've just launched here in Korea, this will provide a solid footing for corporations that want to make a change, make that initial commitment to the women in Korea. This will provide them with that platform so that we can now work towards the next International Congress, which will be in the beautiful island of women in Jeju in Korea between the 23rd to the 25th of May in 2014. And we will offer those companies that join our mission, that come to support the women's empowerment principles, with the CEOs signing on to the CEO's statement of support, an opportunity to not only showcase their companies, but to also be part of our signing ceremony, which will be taking place next year in Jeju.
You're talking about the corporations. Let's talk about the government and NGOs. How much cooperation are you getting from those two entities?
Well, we're actually, BPW Korea, our federation here, is currently speaking with a few of the other civil society organisations. It's our strong view that whilst we have a clear idea of the sort of changes we want to see in the world, we can't achieve this on our own. And we also believe that there's something magical that happens when you get the voice of civil society to be able to not only drive the change, but bring the stakeholders together. So yes, BPW Korea is speaking to government. We are also collaborating with businesses. We are speaking and venturing out to academics. We are engaging in a broad dialogue with all of those stakeholders to really bring about some of these changes that we're advocating for.
I asked you about the feedback you were getting from corporations. What sort of feedback are you getting from government officials as you talk to them about, again, trying to level the playing field here? What are they saying?
Well, you know, I'm actually quite impressed with the Korean government now. They have a mandate to actually look at empowering more women into enterprises. And that's something that I'm largely interested in, and I'm going to be watching the progress of that with a great deal of interest. But if we actually create, it sounds to me that the government is actually trying to create enabling environments for women entrepreneurs. That thrills me, because here in Korea we have some 400,000 women-owned businesses, and that is representative of the larger scale of some 200 million women entrepreneurs worldwide. So I'm very pleased to see that the government is actually recognising the vibrant contribution that women make to business, and they're actually doing something about it.
Asia has a very low gender equality index compared to a lot of other parts of the world. You spoke earlier about some of the obstacles keeping women from being on equal footing with men. In Asia specifically, and if you can speak about Korea specifically, what are some of those obstacles that, as you see them, keeping women back from being on equal footing?
So those barriers are pretty common right throughout the world, and I really am not an expert to discuss the issue specifically to Korea or the Asia Pacific region for that matter. Even though I'm from Australia and I understand the APEC economies quite well, I think each culture is quite unique. And I think what we need though is this broad framework that can then allow countries, that can then allow companies to determine for themselves what is best suited for the women within those jurisdictions. And I really do believe in that. I think what we are offering is really just a framework that we can really bring about the changes that we want to see, how those changes are implemented, and what actually needs to be done, I think are really up to the women that are in those countries. And I would be looking to organisations like BPW, my federation here in Korea in particular, to be driving a lot of those changes, and they are best adept and best suited to understand the needs for our women here.
You mentioned that the BPW International Congress will be held in Jeju next May 2014. First question regarding that, why Jeju?
Why Jeju? Because of the strong women, because of the beautiful island that it is, the island of women, and what better place than to celebrate empowered women leading business, from the top at all levels and in the communities in which we serve and live. And there are so many, when you look at the history of Jeju and the culture, we see so many examples of heroines even. Kim Man-duk is a classic example of not only being the first CEO for Jeju, but also in imparting her philanthropic perspective to how to lead a better and just life. So not only did she amass an incredible amount of wealth in her life, but at a time of need when her people were dying, she actually was there to be able to save them, to be able to buy grains, to be able to feed her own people. And so I think these sort of stories embody the richness of what we are trying to do in the world today. And I think they also tell us a great story. They tell us about the possibilities and what can happen when you really have that spirit to want to do better in the world, not only for yourself, but for other people, for all of humankind. And so I'm absolutely thrilled, delighted that our Congress chose Jeju as being the preferred venue for our 28th International Congress, because I just think that it embodies just everything so beautifully.
And of course, we're about 11 months away from the Congress, but how are preparations going so far, and what can we expect 11 months from now?
So preparations are very well underway, and in fact, we have been discussing with the United Nations Global Compact about inaugurating the first male CEO Gender Diversity Award, which we're very excited about. Here in Korea, we have for the past 18 years been acknowledging male CEOs that really are champions of change in the workplace. And so in 2014, they will celebrate the 20th anniversary of this BPW Gold Award, and we thought that it was very fitting for the international organisation to also inaugurate a male CEO Gender Diversity Award. So we will be doing that in conjunction with the United Nations. It will be inaugurated in Jeju, and we believe that that is a really exciting opportunity, in addition to offering the signing ceremony for the CEOs that come on board to sign the Women's Empowerment Principles, and a whole myriad of opportunities that we are affording not only to the women of Jeju, but the women of Korea. There'll be sessions, not only plenary sessions, but of course workshops, active participation, and deliberation on what we can do to improve our governments, to improve our private sectors, to improve our communities. And I think most importantly, what we really want to be able to do is not only come out with concrete plans of action that we can take back throughout the 98 countries that will be well represented at this Congress, but to also leave something, a significant change for the women here, both in the island and both on the mainland, both in Korea, in South Korea as well. And I believe that given our preparations are very well underway, and that our BPW Federation here in Korea has done an exemplary role in coordinating and bringing all of that together, that we will have a lot of achievements that we will want to be celebrating come Jeju, come May 2014.
A great achievement, of course, in February here in South Korea, inaugurating its first female president. When you look at that, what does that mean to Korean society?
Well, I think it's a great achievement to have a woman. Obviously, we need more women leaders in the world. And I think, from a from a national perspective, I think it's great as a role model. She certainly is a role model now for young girls. I was just at the high school a few days ago speaking to some of the young girls here in Korea, and I think that basically now gives them something that they can look up to. It's another thing to add on to their bucket list, quite possibly. So I think it's good from that perspective. I think, and globally, certainly we want to see a world where we actually have 50% representation. I believe that time will come. We're pretty short off the mark so far. We're probably up to around the 15 to 20% mark, but we need to see more female leaders. Despite the level of politics, putting that aside, I think women leaders actually can contribute and they can make a difference in a way that men don't. And I think that we need a new style of leadership. The world is ready for women and men to lead side by side. And we certainly can't achieve that if we don't have more women in those positions of power and decision making.
You're talking 15-20%. That's incredibly low. Why is this taking so long?
Why is it taking so long? That's a really good question.
A tough question to answer, maybe.
It's a tough question. I really do feel that we spoke about a global consciousness. I think that the world is ready for the changes. We're talking about Korea. In my country, Australia, we've had the first female Prime Minister. Indeed, just a couple of years ago with the Commonwealth, we had the first female Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, handing over the chairmanship to the first female Prime Minister of Australia before Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, before a first female Governor General. So it really is starting to happen, not as quickly as what we would like, but I really do believe that now we have some of those vital ingredients that have been missing. Our organisation has been advocating for the changes for over 80 years. What's been missing has been that business case. That's one of the missing links. We now have that. Now it makes sense to the corporate world to actually be looking at these changes, understanding and engaging in the importance of having more women in those positions of decision making. Governments are starting to understand this now as well. We've seen lots of initiatives right throughout Europe, indeed also throughout Asia, and that's all promising. It's now what we're starting to see are the people. It's the voice of civil society saying that they are ready for these changes. And I think that now it's almost like an exponential curve. I think we'll start to see a lot more of those changes happening far more quicker.
In speaking about President Park Geun-hye, what role would you like to see her take over the next few years while she's in office, and what role would you like to see her play in the region?
Well, look, politics aside, I think this initial initiative that she has launched with this mandate to support women entrepreneurs, I think that's a great opportunity for her women. We probably need more of those sort of opportunities. I think some of the policy work that she's looking at is also worth commendation. But what she's doing, I would expect not to be different to what any other leader would be doing, male or female. So these are really initiatives that should be considered by world leaders, and I think that her as a female shouldn't mean anything different other than her championing the cause in her own way.
Ms. Miriklis, we thank you very much for sharing your insights with us today on the show. Thank you very much.
That's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.